Thank you, Dom. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the Q&A session for Dom's great tutorial on malleting. My name is Margaret Merkley, and I'm chair of the program committee and president of the Ontario Guild of English Handbell Ringers.
Hello, my name's Rob Cairns, and I'll be joining Marg this afternoon for the tutorial as the other moderator. I am the vice president of OGEHR, and I'm also chair of the education committee.
Today's tutorial was produced by Dominique Moreau, and in addition to this tutorial, you will find 4 other tutorials that Dom has done for us in the past that are now sitting on the event page of the OGEHR website. And these include playing with heavy bells, active listening, how to use a metronome, and the last one was meters.
Dom is our clinician and tutorial host for today's session. He is a percussionist and music teacher in Ottawa. Dom plays with the Ottawa Symphony Orchestra and teaches at Gisèle-Lalonde High School and also the Ottawa Youth Orchestra. He plays with the St. Andrew's Ringers. At this point, we will turn to our questions in the Zoom chat, and we will start to forward those on to Dom to answer for you.
Thank you. And Dom, we have one already from Maggie in Ottawa, and her question is, when I open a score that already has someone's mallet markings in it, is it considered bad etiquette to change them? She's left-handed and frequently reverse the sticking.
There's no long answer for this. It's your hands. You know them better. Change the stickings. Just hopefully the previous person didn't put them in pen or something. That would be the bad etiquette here, is to write something in pen that you can't erase. If it's not your own score, pencil, always pencil. But no, for sure you can erase someone else's markings and put your own in. Just make sure that if you're sharing the book with someone else that you can both write stickings that make sense for each of you. Frequently, handbell players will share music, so make sure that whatever you write is not a problem for your fellow ringers.
I know that just to add a little further point for that, when we've had people sharing music before, we've had some people always write their stuff above the score and some write it below the score, which kind of sorts that out. We have another question from the chat, and it actually has to do with chimes. Is it appropriate to mallet chimes at all?
I mean, there's no problem there's no inherent problem with malleting a chime. You can definitely mallet a chime. Usually, because of the nature of the instrument, it won't produce a sound that's much different than the clapper. So there usually isn't really a point in malleting a chime. What would be nice to do, it's hard to demonstrate. I'll just try to use my phone instead. I'll have a chime with me. If you have your chime, well, it might be easier to turn it around before malleting if you end up malleting it so the clapper is not in the way. But in itself, there's no problem. To add to that, though, the low chimes, when you go below, I think it's a C3 is the lowest that has a clapper on it. The very, very big ones don't even have clappers installed. They're meant to be malleted because they're just so unwieldy. Take them with 2 hands and try to shake it, there's no point. So they're just meant to be put on the rack and you mallet them. But I don't know many choirs that have them up here in Canada. But those giant chimes, you're expected to mallet them. The true as well for the threes. The low threes, quite often you'll put them on a rack, you'll put them backwards and you just mallet them. It's a lot easier because they're unwieldy. They're just so long and the bell has a handle. It's quite easy to just play a bell, but the bigger the chime, it gets longer, and you're holding it somewhere in the middle. It's just very unwieldy. But for a small chime, there's usually no point.
Thank you. The next question, Dom, is one that I think many people can relate to. When you're malleting, it's really easy to speed up. Do you have any tricks on how not to speed up?
Count. That's definitely the first trick. Count and subdivide all the time. Actually, subdividing will help you because if you can think of notes between the notes you're malleting, you won't speed up as much. The smallest the interval between the things you think, the better. That way you're slowing down your brain. You have to think of everything. If you're just trying to think of whole notes, you'll likely to speed up. As well, make sure you're listening to others and watching the conductor if there's one. These are usually good tricks to keep speed. Another one actually for speed, I'll try to use the bottom of my screen as sort of as a bell. The stick height will impact your speed. It's really hard to go fast if your mallets are really high. So you might just need to raise your sticks just a little bit, and that might slow you down. That might help slow you down. Just watch out that you're not supposed to go super slow and super piano, because then you'll be loud if you increase the stick height as well. But it's a matter of speed, right? Speed is distance over time. If there's more distance in the same time, then you won't speed up. Just a few different tricks, but counting is by far the main goal here.
We have another question in the chat, and this is, what's the best way to mallet a shared bell? Now, I'm just thinking if that's a shared bell on the table, or are we talking about the situation where sometimes you've got two bells in your hand and you turn to your neighbor and have them mallet for you? I don't know, maybe you can think about both situations, if it's a shared bell between people, and also
think of a third
the time when
situation.
you actually use your neighbor.
All right, well, let's go in order. So first situation, the bell is on the table. Don't bring a bell to a mallet on the table. That won't work. That was just me misspeaking. If the bell is on the table, well, again, if you're holding your mallet here, it won't work. But if you're holding the mallet at the end, you have quite a lot of reach. Don't hesitate to just reach. Just make sure that your partner, your neighbor, knows that you're malleting that bell, and they should know not to put it in the middle of their setup. They should put it close to you. Ideally, it should be in between you, and it's the closest bell to you, so you can just mallet without interfering with whatever they're doing. Communication is key. This is teamwork. We're all playing the same instrument together. So whatever the solution ends up being, just make sure that both people agree to it. And then you might need to practice it. This is something actually percussionists tend to do a lot in symphony orchestras. Quite often we practice the choreography more than we practice the actual notes that we have to play. Changing mallets and getting to another instrument, well, sometimes you need to just practice that. Like, okay, show up 10 minutes early to rehearsal with your neighbor, agree on the time, and then, okay, let's just try that section so I can mallet without getting in your way. Teamwork will work best here. The second option that Rob was mentioning is someone has mallets and you have to mallet them while they're holding them. Face each other. It's a bit hard to look at the conductor like that, but yeah, face each other so the person's not trying to reach around you to mallet them or something like that. You want to be efficient, right? So find the way that will have the most efficiency. If the person holding the bells can turn even more, then you might be able to look at the conductor while you're malleting the bells that someone else is holding, assuming you need to watch the conductor. But I'm going to go ahead and assume that most handbell conductors are good conductors and you should watch them, especially if they're watching all the tutorials that Lisa has been giving. Great tutorials for conductors there. Last one, actually, I'm thinking of, because you didn't mention that, Rob, but sometimes a bell needs to be rung and malleted right after, and both of your hands have bells in them. And in that case, sometimes you might be the person malleting a bell that someone else is ringing. They have to ring and bring it right back on the table so you can mallet them. That's an option. Again, that is teamwork. You have to plan ahead. This happens a lot in bass bell. If you're playing in the low octave, quite often you share bells and one person has mallets and the other one has bells, and like ring, put down, the other person mallets, bring it back up, ring again. You have to know exactly the motions you're doing, and again, practicing it slowly, practicing the choreography more than the actual notes might be useful in that case.
I agree with you. Ringing bells in general is a team effort, but particularly in an occasion like that. Dom, there's lots of different mallets, and I'm wondering if you can just spend a few minutes telling us and helping us understand which are the best mallets to ring and to use with each bell.
So both Malmark and Schulmerich, which are the main two companies that are used right now in North America at least, they both sell mallets, and they write on their mallets what bells they should be used for. They usually put a range. They're usually quite accurate. I would go with that. Now you might find that, oh, there's these three different models that all include E5 as a bell I can mallet with them. Go with your ear. Whatever sounds best works best for sure. And you feel free to ask your colleagues, do my mallets sound too hard to you? Are my notes sticking out? If that's the case, you might be using mallets that are too hard compared to the person to your left or right or something. Your ear is the best. The conductor is also good. Their job is literally to listen and tell you what is wrong. So ask your conductor. And if they haven't heard, they might just, let's play it and I'll listen again. And I'll listen for that. That being said, different acoustics will require different mallets. If you're playing in a church that is very, very wet acoustic, that rings a lot, err on the harder side of a mallet. That helps with articulation. It helps with carrying the sound quickly and without too much wash over it. If you're using soft mallets, you're getting more wash and less articulation out of the instrument. Really depends. One thing I can say, when I'm playing with the St. Andrew's Ringers, St. Andrew's Church in Ottawa doesn't ring too much. We can go with soft mallets and it sounds good. There's no ring that is hard to play with. But when I play with Ottawa Symphony, our main venue is the Dominion Chalmers Church in Ottawa. And you can clap and hear your clapping hands for 5 seconds after you've clapped. When I'm playing with the Ottawa Symphony, I'm using the hardest mallets I have on almost any instrument I'm playing. It just sounds better. Not for me, from where I am, it doesn't sound good. But for the audience, it sounds good because they're hearing it clearly and articulately. The reverb, if you will, comes from the room instead of the mallet. But the indications on the Schulmerich and Malmark mallets are good. That being said, the mallets I used for the tutorial, they're Musser M16. They were not meant to be handbell mallets. The bells I borrowed didn't have actual Schulmerich mallets, so I picked some mallets that I had that sounded good. I just tried a bunch. These ones sounded good, so I used those. Your ear is a tool. It's your best friend, second only to your metronome. Okay, use your ear. It will guide you through choosing the right mallets, and try to match the sound that is happening with the rest of your ensemble. Oh, and if I can add something for bass bells, quite often you end up having a setup that has like a low C3, and then you might have a B3 in the same setup. And those bells are, the C is twice the size of the B. If you're playing with the low, big mallet, on the C3 it sounds great. On the B3, it won't make a good sound. It's too big for the bell. So if you're splitting the bells in the weird way in the bass, it might be worth trying to have two mallets that are different sizes in both of your hands to adapt to the bell. That might change your sticking and make your sticking quite hard, but if you've got a good player, they can usually manage it. Even though that goes against what I talked in my tutorial of using both hands to go faster. But there are some special cases where you can break the rules.
So we actually have a question which sort of relates to this. And just to confirm then, the markings that are on the mallet, there really isn't a detrimental effect using different mallets on different bells. It really is just all about the sound in that case.
The sound is the main concern, but also, I don't think anyone would use mallets meant for a G6 on the 3 bell, but that would be detrimental to the bell. The big bells are quite thin, and they're easy to damage. So don't use a super hard mallet on the big bell.
But let's say going to your neighbor mallets, the one set that's marked for one up or one down, that's really not going to have a detrimental effect.
No. I mean, you might even not have a choice if you're playing Beltry, for example. Sometimes the range of your Beltry will be wider than the range that the mallets are supposed to be. So you won't have a choice to do that. I did stumble into that problem last year. I was playing Beltry solo at St. Andrews, and none of the mallets we had fit the range of the Beltry I was playing. So I ended up using slightly harder mallets on the bigger bells. But it did work. It's just, again, the technique I showed in the tutorial of lifting. You're going to prevent a lot of damage if you're doing that, because the bell can just ring it out instead of the damage sticking to the bell. But yeah, no, definitely you can go a little bit outside of a written range either way for sure. Yeah.
Dom, I'm not the only person that, even looking at somebody rolling the mallets, it looks difficult. It is difficult. Do you have any tips or tricks on helping us learn how to be successful rollers with the mallets?
Yes, definitely. So I'll try to use these again. They've got bright red tips. It's really good for showing in the Zoom. The mallets should be going the same height. What I see a lot of people doing is this. Your roll will not be even. The hands are not even. So practice in front of a mirror. You'll see everything you're doing right away. You can hit on a book or on whatever. If you're lucky, you have a practice pad. Sure, that is meant for drummers, but you don't need that to practice. It's not a necessity. All you need is something, and make sure the hands are doing the same motion. Make sure you're holding the sticks the same way. If you're holding this one stick up and one stick down, then the lever at the other end is not the same length. You won't get a sound that's even. So that's the first step, is to make sure that everything you're doing is even from both sides. As far as, visually, if it's even visually, it'll be even, likely to be even sound-wise. The next thing now is to make sure that you're even in time. And that is a bit of a harder problem. That needs a bit of practice. Again, I think I've mentioned that in other tutorials. The main key is not how long you practice, it's how often you practice. So you don't play a roll for 5 months, who cares? Practice your roll every week. 5 minutes every week, that's it. But just a little bit every week. And in 5 months, you won't believe how much better you are. 5 minutes is nothing. But it's really practicing, making sure everything is even. If you have access to something that makes a bit more sound, if you can borrow a bell from your choir, go for it. And here's an exercise, actually. I should have prepared a handout for this. Maybe I can give you one and we can put it on after.
We can always put something onto the website after if you feel that there's something we want to put on, so that's not a problem.
Okay, so I'll have a handout for this exercise, but basically it's a timpani exercise, but it works for any roll. You play 8 notes alternating for 1 bar. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and then you switch to just one hand doing the same rhythm. 3 and 4, and then 16s for 1 bar. And then you loop that again. You don't need to do it fast. It doesn't need to sound like a roll, but it basically gets you to do the proper motion for a roll. So the first 2 bars have the same rhythm that you hear, but your hands play a different rhythm. Your right hand in the first bar plays quarter notes, but in the second bar plays 8 notes by itself. And when between the second and the third bar, the right hand doesn't change the 8 notes. The left hand just plays in between those 8 notes. So it gets you to slowly get out of the thinking that, oh, the roll is fast. The roll isn't fast. The roll is alternating. And then you can try leading with the left. Try to do a roll leading with your left hand. That might break some wiring in your brain that's like, oh, wait, okay, I'm good now. Because we tend to think of our dominant hand a lot more. And if you start thinking about your weak hand, then they'll get more even. So that is an exercise I would suggest to practice your role. It's not super hard. You can do it as a choir. If you're a choir director, you want to get your choir to do it, you can play it all together, and then get every ringer to play it by themselves. So to hear if it sounds even, if it sounds like a roll, you can even try to play a scale up, each ringer rolling one note. It takes time, but it's not a bad idea. So those are the tricks I would give for rolls. But don't hesitate to practice. Even record yourself. We live in an era with smartphones. Put a bell down, take 2 mallets, record yourself, and listen to it. Do you like it? Yes? Good. No? What's wrong? What can you improve? Are you 2 hands not in time, then that exercise on the handout would be useful. If you're doing, if it's just that one hand is louder than the other, well, it's probably stick height. Usually that is the main problem. But try to listen and watch to your roll and see if you can find out where the little problem is.
I think we have one last question here. You as a percussionist, I don't know if you play marimba or not, but you've probably run into a situation where you have used 4 mallets. Have you ever run into a situation where you've used 4 mallets as a single player for handbells?
Not in a choir, no. Never in a choir have I encountered that. I have seen it in handbell music and beltry music, sorry. Usually it's marked as optional, and they give you an option for 2 mallets if you don't want to do 4 mallets. 4 mallets is it's a beast on its own. This is how I usually hold my mallets. The outside mallet is just held by the pinky and the ring finger, and the inside mallet moves with the index and thumb like that and is sort of anchored in the middle of my hand. And the middle finger doesn't do anything. It's just there for show. That is how I hold my mallets, but there's 2 other ways that people tend to. This is called the traditional way. It's a cross grip. The mallets do cross in the middle, and they're held together by pinky and ring. And it's just right next to your fingernail is against the stick, and you can change the width like that. The last one is called Burton grip. The first mallet is in between your index and middle finger, and the second mallet just goes on top, and you move it with your pinky and your ring. I'm not a fan of those last 2 personally. I have some colleagues who play with them and they sound amazing, so it really is about personal preference. If you're just playing in a choir, you're very unlikely to see 4 mallets. Very, very unlikely. Beltry happens, and it's quite difficult because bells are not a flat surface, so playing 4 mallets on bells is quite a challenge. If possible, in a choir, just get your neighbor to take 2 mallets, if possible, or rearrange something. It would be my advice. Unless you've got someone who's used to play 4 mallets, it's a whole different beast. It takes a lot of practice. I'm not saying don't do it. If you're going to do it, try to find a percussionist to give you lessons, I guess, is a good idea. Because it's a beast on its own, yes.
Thank you very much, John. I think that your background as a percussionist is such an asset to both your playing and your malleting, but also to this tutorial on malleting. So thank you very much.
Welcome.
So please mark 7 p.m. next Sunday, March 14th on your calendars and plan on being a part of OGEHR's next handbell tutorial session. Lisa Kyriakides will be presenting a tutorial on choosing music for your ensembles. While this tutorial is directed towards conductors, all ringers will want to be aware of how to choose music for ensembles, especially as we continue to navigate COVID and have fewer ringers able to ring together. We hope you will encourage your OGEHR friends to join us for this tutorial, both the video and the subsequent Q&A session.
On behalf of the Ontario Guild of English Handbell Ringers, I would like to thank all of you for joining us for the Q&A session today and your excellent questions, and Dom in particular for the great tutorial and for the follow-up to the questions that have been asked. Dom, thank you very much for all of your tutorials. This is your 5th one that you've created, and it's great to have these on our website for anybody to look back at. Thank you.